One day, when my brother and I were randomly logged in with our alpha accounts, we noticed a new gang in local doing some ganking. About 10 taluses and nagas with appropriate scanning and looting alts. As an expected response to this discovery, I went back to Jita and blinged out my rattlesnake to let him have a go. Unfortunately, he almost tried, but he failed so bad he didn't even get to shoot. As you can see, he was very new to ganking and still had a lot to figure out. Whoopsies, just a smidge late. A couple of weeks later, I resubbed so we could start being more involved in harassing this newcomer. I dropped a bunch of shiny stuff in my Mastodon and let him have another go. He did get to shoot this time, but he called it after the first handful were barely denting the shields. Me shooting back might have also given it away that it was bait, since he was using a T2 fit Nagas and Taluses. One thing we started to do was loot his wrecks. They averaged roughly 30 million apiece, which means if you were to catch him on a full hit, you could bank 300 million in free loops. After a while, he started aborting when we'd show up. In this case, all I had to do was fly past my bomber, and that was too much for him to stand the thought of me stealing all of those large T2 blasters from the wrecks. But that didn't stop us from having some more fun at his expense with some ships we pulled out of the mothballs, like this Snipe Fit Naga. For some reason my guns had auto-repeat turned off. With some clever Warp 2 tricks, we could also stage 100 clicks off the gate, snipe him from range, and then warp to 50 on a bookmark from the other side, and then we could loot his wrecks. He did catch on to this though, and he even came after one of the staged Nagas with a fleet of coercers. But since it was aligned to the gate, by the time he landed on me, I was already out of scram range, and by the time I heard the warning beeps, I had the client in the background, he still wasn't close enough, and I just clicked warp and left half the fleet of coercers to deal with Concord. As you can see from these cargo values, this venture's more than paid for itself just in the T2 blasters he's donated to my hangar. In all seriousness, he does take his blasters very seriously. One day I got home from work, saw that he had left a Golem wreck on gate, grabbed my Noctis, and went to go get some blue salvage. By the time that I had landed, the wreck was already salvaged. But just then, his fleet showed up, and so I sat back to watch the fireworks. I guess that was too threatening for him, so he tasked one of his NATOs on my untanked Noctis. It caught me off guard, but then I told myself, NATOs only get one shot, you're good. Oops. Nope, they got 2 shots in 0.6 space. So then I told myself, William has 1 left, so surely he wouldn't waste another. I'm good. Then I grabbed all the blue wrecks and the loot that I could, about 100 million, and he didn't like that one bit and went from 0 to racist real fast. So now I fly the tanked Noctis just in case he tries again. There's half a dozen gank groups in the area, though they seem to actually know what they're doing and they're harder to catch. I did manage to bait one of them with my torrent and about 1 billion in PI in the hold. It went about as dismal for them as I expected, but he was a good sport. One of the many times I was following his fleet around the gates with the bomber, I completely missed the fact that he also had a thrasher he was using to catch the pods. Then for some reason, I drove straight at the ball. He was incredibly proud of that kill, even with the fact that it was paid for many times over by his donations of large T2 blasters. On occasion, I'd mix it up and come out with the Falcon. This time, though, he was only going after Aguila, and that many Nagas for Aguila seems overkill. But because it was so thin, the jams didn't really do any good. But I still got that blue loot for my couple of minutes of time and effort. He has such a distaste for anyone interfering even to the smallest degree that he decided to expend a couple of Nagas on one of my bombers that wasn't really contributing or preventing anything. Needless to say, I was sad that he didn't send more. Those things aren't going to hit anything this small outside of the fall-off going a few hundred meters a second. He also hits freighters. For the most part, we've never actually been around when he does this, except this time. Either he was too slow with his own freighter or we scared him off the attempt. But this unlucky bloke decided to roll the dice. Next time, though, we've already got our freighter in system. I think because he's trying to manage all 14 accounts on his own, sometimes he forgets little details like making sure his looter actually got docked up. I didn't get the screen recorder going in time for the initial kill, but then he left the pod sitting there too. I still don't know why he doesn't just use the gank-friendly upwell station next to the gates, rather than flying halfway across the system to my home station. Whatevs, I'll thank him for the loot regardless, and making sure he knows I appreciated it. 2.7 billion pod? Oof. We aren't the only opportunists that he has to deal with. And at least he makes sure that the locals know when he wasn't fast enough. Since it's been nearly a decade since I was really active, I'm still working on the rust out. Probably would have actually grabbed his looter if I had remembered to decloak 5 seconds before I wanted to target anything. Though he did leave enough blasters on grid to make it worth it for me. And for some reason he left a single 100 million item in the wreck. Naturally, I cloaked up and waited to see if he'd come back. He didn't, but someone else did try soon enough. I'm not sure if he thinks he was being slick, but he's always staging on the upwell structures near the gates. It's smart, actually, since the tether keeps him safe from bothersome do-gooders like me cashing in on free kill rights. I'd been trying to bump his ships past the tether a few times. When he stays long enough, I can actually collide with them, but couldn't quite get one all the way out of tether range until now. The funny thing is, after this, he absolutely hated seeing my Macarial. But then even worse, he started parking much deeper in tether and having everyone orbit the central ship. This of course tanked his align time, and he missed a lot of hits because his fleet wouldn't land in time before the tackle ship died. We're now to the point in the process where my screen capture utility, Windows Game Bar, just decided to plain refuse to record. I had quite a few entertaining interactions that all I have to show for it is a couple of screenshots. That and most of the time when my brother or I log in, within 5 minutes, he's docked up and logging out. A few rare exceptions, he stayed logged in for more than 10 or 15 minutes with me in system. But that's usually as far as he takes it. Can't have a solo Care Bear disrupting his 14 account ganking operation. A couple of months ago, CCP had an event where they stuck all of the banned bot account stuff into a handful of structures that they self-destructed. In one of those thousands of containers, I found a fully fit Raven. The moment I hopped in that ship, I had a purpose for it. To troll Fluffer. I was going to modify the fit enough to be able to tank most of his fleet, and then I was going to shadow his scanning alt and sit at 0 on the intended target gate. Usually I would follow for 2 to 3 gate changes, and then he'd just log out. But not that last time. He'd actually had enough, and was going to put his ISK where his mouth was. I didn't realize at the moment that the lock time was going to be so bad. I was hoping to at least take one of them before Concord, and then maybe survive. But surviving 11 Nagas and a T2 fit Raven is a bit of a tall order. I really should have held back, and then jumped the gate at the last moment. And again, he was incredibly proud of spending 1.7 bill in Nagas just to barely kill a T2 fit Raven. He didn't even get the loot. Another guy that's been harassing him grabbed it. And it was, of course, at that moment I had my next plan. I was going to bling out that Macarial and park it at 0. Only took a couple of days of shadowing him before he got tired, and within 30 seconds of me landing on the gate, he brought his own bumping Macarial to deal with me. I was so happy to see he was going to commit another 1.7 billion to the cause. But I proceeded to drive up to the ball of blue Rex and yoinked 200 or 300 million in T2 blasters. And that's where I'll have to leave this saga of messing with another crazy Russian ganker that has 14 accounts. He's been a little slippery and shy lately, but that doesn't mean we don't have plans for him. As a closing comment, I will say it doesn't take much to annoy the gankers. Steal their loot, loot the wrecks, harass their fleets. As long as you have a properly fit ship, you don't have to worry. Just make sure you're keeping an eye on the situation and you don't get too deep. Like this situation, where Fluffer used a couple of maulers to pop a Tarja. I warped down to try to catch a scooper, but then one of the other local ganker fleets, New Order Enforcer, didn't appreciate that either. He did scan me first and probably saw enough faction modules on my Enforcer to feel like he had a chance. I was about to stick around anyways, until Fluffer came back, with the rest of his ships. Even though I would have been outside his optimal, I was still low enough in armor to not risk it needlessly. I've already took billions from this guy. So until part 2 of this saga, fly safe out there and try to have some fun while you're doing it.